Thank you for taking the time to listen to the story. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our channel. We appreciate it, and thank you in advance. Please leave the name of the city you're listening from in the comment section below. It helps us see our reach in the community. Let's start the story. Everything was going perfectly according to plan until the screaming started. I remember checking my watch at exactly 9:47 a.m. as Marcus finished bypassing the last security system. The vault timer was counting down. The hostages were quietly huddled in the corner of the First National Bank of Sacramento's main floor, and my crew had control of every entry point. 20 years of planning heists had taught me that when things go too smoothly, you should start worrying. But this job felt different. Perfect. The morning had started like any other in downtown Sacramento. The bank opened its doors at 9 a.m. sharp, and we walked in at 9:15, just as the early rush was tapering off. 15 customers plus 8 staff members, exactly what our surveillance had predicted. No one even noticed us until Marcus disabled the silent alarm and Cooper locked the front doors. I'd selected this branch carefully. 3 stories of solid granite and steel, built in 1928 when banks were made to last. The thick walls and limited entry points that made it perfect for our heist would soon prove valuable for entirely different reasons. 10 minutes until the vault opens, Ray, Marcus called from his position at the security desk. His fingers danced across the keyboard as he monitored the bank's systems. Everything was green. I nodded, doing another sweep of the main floor. The hostages were being watched by Cooper and Lisa, both experienced enough to keep people calm without unnecessary roughness. Hostages who feel unnecessarily threatened tend to do stupid things, and I didn't need any heroes today. That's when I noticed something odd. The usual background noise of downtown Sacramento, traffic, sirens, construction, had gone quiet. In its place was an unsettling stillness broken only by distant shouts and what sounded like breaking glass. "Hey, Ray," Cooper's voice was tight with tension. "You need to see this." I walked over to where he stood by one of the tall windows, keeping my movements calm and deliberate. Never show anxiety in front of hostages. That's another lesson experience teaches you. Through the ornate iron grating that covered the window, I could see something happening at the intersection of 7th and J Street. A city bus had crashed into a newspaper stand, its front end crumpled like an accordion. People were running, but not in the organized way you'd expect after a traffic accident. This was pure panic. "What the hell?" I muttered, watching as a man in a business suit sprinted past the bank, his face a mask of terror. Behind him, someone, or something, followed with an unnatural lurching gait. The radios we'd brought to monitor police channels crackled to life with a burst of panicked voices. "All units, be advised. Multiple 187 citywide. Suspects showing extreme aggression. No response to verbal commands. Shoot on sight. God help us." Then nothing but dead air and occasional bursts of static. The hostages exchanged terrified glances as the implications of what we'd just heard sank in. One of the hostages, a middle-aged woman in a blue blazer, spoke up. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "My daughter just texted me. There are attacks happening all over the city. People are getting sick, becoming violent. We need to—" "Quiet," Cooper snapped, but I held up my hand. 20 years of experience had also taught me to listen when your instincts scream that something's wrong. "Let me see the text," I said, approaching her slowly. She held up her phone with shaking hands. The message was garbled, panic-typed, but certain phrases jumped out. "People attacking each other, like rabid animals. National Guard." A sudden bang made everyone jump. Marcus swore as his monitors flickered. "Power's getting unstable," he reported. "But the vault sequence is still running. 7 minutes." I was about to respond when an ear-splitting scream erupted from outside. Through the window, I watched in horror as the businessman who'd run past moments ago went down under his pursuer. What happened next would be burned into my memory forever. The attacker, a woman in a blood-stained postal worker's uniform, tore into him with inhuman savagery. Her movements were unnatural and broken, her joints bent at impossible angles. her head twitching violently with each step, her body contorting in ways that defied human anatomy. Every movement was sharp and savage, driven by something that had stripped away all traces of humanity. The businessman's screams cut off abruptly as she ripped into his throat with her teeth. "Jesus Christ," Cooper whispered. The postal worker's head snapped up, her face smeared with fresh blood. Even through the window and grating, I could see her eyes, milky white and utterly devoid of humanity. She lurched to her feet, leaving her victim twitching on the sidewalk, and began shambling toward the bank. That's when the businessman started moving again. His movements were spastic, uncoordinated, but he was definitely getting up despite his savaged throat. As he rose, I saw his eyes had gone milk white, just like his attackers. "Ray?" Marcus's voice cracked slightly. "What do we do?" The vault timer showed 6 minutes remaining. Outside, more screams echoed through the strangely still morning air. I could see smoke rising from several blocks away, and the sounds of breaking glass and car alarms were getting closer. I looked at the hostages, 16 terrified people who were no longer just obstacles in a heist, but potential allies in whatever nightmare was unfolding. I thought about the thick walls and limited entry points that had made this bank such an attractive target, and I thought about what I'd just witnessed outside. "Change of plans," I said, my mind racing as I tried to process our rapidly deteriorating situation. "Marcus, keep working on the vault. We might need what's inside for more than just profit now. Cooper, Lisa, help me get these windows secured. Everyone else." I turned to the hostages, making a decision that would alter the course of everything to come. "Everyone else, we're about to have much bigger problems than a bank robbery." Little did I know, as I began directing the fortification of our shelter, just how massive those problems would become. The next 12 hours would test every skill I'd learned in 20 years of crime, and teach me lessons about survival that no heist ever could. The next 30 minutes were a blur of focused activity as we transformed the bank's main floor into a fortress. Experience had taught me that survival often depends on those first crucial decisions, and right now, our survival meant securing every possible entry point. Cooper and I dragged heavy oak desks across the floor, positioning them against the windows while Lisa and 2 of the braver hostages, a former Marine named Mike and a construction worker called Tom, helped stack filing cabinets against the doors. The sounds from outside were getting worse, screams, crashes, and that horrible gurgling moan that seemed to echo from every direction. "Vault's open," Marcus announced, his voice tight with tension. Through the bulletproof glass of the teller stations, I could see more infected shambling past the bank. Their bodies moved with that same broken, violent motion, heads snapping side to side, limbs twisting at unnatural angles. Every movement driven by pure predatory instinct. "Ray!" Cooper's urgent whisper drew my attention to the side entrance. Through the narrow window, I could see one of them pressing against the glass, a man in hospital scrubs, his face covered in dark fluid that might have been blood. His jaw worked mechanically, teeth clicking together as he pressed harder against the reinforced glass. A young teller in the hostage group started crying quietly. "My brother works at Mercy General," she whispered. "He called this morning about patients attacking the staff. Said they were biting people, tearing them apart. Then the line went dead." I was about to respond when the power went out. The emergency lights kicked in immediately, bathing everything in a dim, bluish glow. Marcus swore as his monitors flickered and died. "Main grid's down," he reported, switching to his laptop's battery power. "But I got the vault open first. You need to see what's inside, Ray." I followed him down to the vault, leaving Cooper and Lisa to watch the increasingly agitated crowd upstairs. The vault's massive door stood open, revealing not just the expected cash and safety deposit boxes, but something that made my blood run cold. Dozens of cases marked with CDC logos and biohazard symbols. "What the hell is a bank doing with CDC materials?" Marcus whispered, keeping his distance from the cases. Before I could answer, a scream erupted from upstairs, followed by the sound of breaking glass. We sprinted back to the main floor to find chaos erupting. One of the hostages, an elderly man in an expensive suit, was convulsing on the floor. His skin had taken on a grayish tinge, and dark fluid leaked from his nose and mouth. The other hostages were backing away in terror as Cooper and Lisa trained their weapons on him. "He just started shaking," Mike, the ex-Marine, reported. "Then he fell over and started changing." The man's convulsions grew more violent, and a sound emerged from his throat that wasn't human, a wet, guttural howl that made every hair on my body stand on end. Then his eyes snapped open, revealing that same milky whiteness we'd seen outside. "Put him down!" Mike shouted, but it was too late. The infected man lunged with incredible speed, tackling the nearest hostage, a middle-aged woman who'd been praying quietly moments before. His teeth tore into her shoulder as she screamed. Cooper's gun barked twice. The first bullet caught the infected man in the shoulder with no effect. The second went through his head, and he collapsed instantly. But the woman he'd bitten was already starting to convulse. "Get back," I ordered, my mind racing. "Everyone away from her. Cooper, Lisa, get the others to the second floor, now." As they herded the terrified hostages toward the stairs, I made a decision that would haunt me. The woman's convulsions were getting worse, her skin taking on that same grayish color. I raised my gun. "I'm sorry," I whispered and pulled the trigger. The sound of the shot was still echoing when a massive crash came from the front of the bank. The infected outside had heard the commotion and were hurling themselves against our barricades with inhuman strength. I could see the heavy desks starting to move under their assault. "What's the plan, Ray?" Marcus asked, his voice shaking slightly as he watched our defenses slowly give way. I thought about those CDC containers in the vault, about how quickly the infection had spread through that woman's body, about the 16 people now looking to me for protection, not because I had their money, but because I might have the skills to keep them alive. "New plan," I said, checking my ammunition. "We need to get to the roof. There's a maintenance ladder that connects to the building next door. But first," I looked at the vault below. "First, we need to know what the hell's in those CDC cases, because whatever started this nightmare might be sitting in our vault right now." The pounding at the doors grew louder. Through gaps in our barricade, I could see dozens of infected pressing against the windows, their milky eyes fixed on us with predatory intensity. Their bodies twisted and contorted as they slammed against the glass, joints bending backward, heads rotating too far on broken necks, every movement a violation of natural law. We had minutes, maybe less, before they broke through. And somewhere in this bank was the possible source of it all, locked away in sterile cases that were never meant to be here. Whatever else happened in the next few hours, I was determined to find out why. But first we had to survive the next few minutes, and judging by the spiderweb cracks spreading across the reinforced windows, that was going to be a challenge all its own. The journey back to the vault felt like descending into a tomb. Emergency lights cast sickly blue shadows across the marble walls as Marcus and I made our way down, leaving Cooper and Lisa to guard the increasingly panicked group upstairs. Time was running out. Every few seconds, another crash would echo through the building as the infected hurled themselves mindlessly against our barricades. The constant impacts were taking their toll, sooner or later. Something would give. The vault stood open, its massive door a testament to human engineering. But it wasn't the stacks of cash or safety deposit boxes that drew our attention. It was the dozen sleek black cases bearing CDC logos, each secured with digital locks that still glowed despite the power outage. "Here," Marcus said, pulling tools from his bag. As our team's tech expert, he'd gotten us through countless security systems. But these locks were different. Military grade. A particularly loud crash from above made us both jump. Glass shattered somewhere on the main floor, followed by Cooper's voice shouting orders and the sound of furniture being dragged. "They've broken through the front window," Lisa's voice carried down to us. "The noise is drawing more of them." My hands were steady as I helped Marcus work on the nearest case. Years of cracking safes had taught me to control my fear, to let adrenaline sharpen my focus rather than cloud it. After what felt like hours but couldn't have been more than minutes, the lock clicked open. Inside, nestled in foam padding, were rows of vials containing an amber liquid. A laptop and several folders bearing classified stamps were secured beside them. Marcus grabbed the laptop while I flipped through the documents, my blood running cold as I read. Project Echo, I muttered, scanning the pages. Experimental neurological regeneration therapy, intended to reverse brain death in trauma patients. My eyes widened as I reached the test results. Holy hell. "Ray!" Cooper's voice echoed down to us. "We've got problems. The sound of breaking glass is drawing them in from everywhere." I shoved the documents into my jacket. "How many?" "Dozens. They're following the noise, heading straight for the breach." A scream punctuated his words, followed by the sharp crack of gunfire. Marcus and I exchanged looks before grabbing what we could from the case and sprinting back upstairs. The scene that greeted us was chaos. The barricade near the front window had partially collapsed, and through the gap, I could see them coming. Waves of infected drawn by the sounds of our struggle, their dead eyes fixed on the source of the noise. Their movements were erratic but relentless, driven purely by base instinct and hunger. One of them, a woman in a shredded business suit, stumbled through the broken window, glass cutting into her flesh as she crawled forward. She showed no reaction to the injuries, no sign of pain or hesitation. Behind her, more followed, climbing blindly over each other, drawn by the sounds and smells of living prey. "They're like sharks in a feeding frenzy," Mike said, his military training evident in his calm analysis. "Pure predatory instinct. They'll keep coming as long as they sense us." Another window shattered under the constant pressure. Through it climbed one of the infected, a massive figure in torn police riot gear. His movements were clumsy but powerful, driven by raw muscular force rather than coordination. His head swung from side to side, tracking the sounds of our movements. Cooper's shot caught him in the chest with no effect. The infected officer lurched forward, knocking over tables and chairs, creating an opening for others to follow. He wasn't strategic or clever, just a mass of muscle operating on pure killer instinct. "Upstairs!" I shouted, firing at the riot officer's head. The shot connected, dropping him, but more were already pouring through the gap. "Everyone up now!" We retreated to the stairwell in practiced order, just like we'd planned for bank robberies gone wrong. Cooper and Lisa laid down covering fire, while Marcus helped the slower hostages up the stairs. I brought up the rear, my mind racing as I processed what we'd found in the vault. Brain death reversal. Neurological regeneration. The CDC documents had mentioned unexpected results in early trials, subjects showing complete loss of higher brain function and reversion to primitive instincts. Had they been developing this in secret? And why store it in a bank vault? The second floor gave us some breathing room. The stairwell was narrow, a natural bottleneck that would slow down the mindless charge of the infected. As Mike and Tom helped us barricade the stairs, I pulled Cooper aside. "We need to burn it," I said quietly, showing him the documents. "Whatever this is, whatever they were working on, it needs to end here." Cooper's eyes widened as he skimmed the pages. "This is what started it?" "Has to be. Those vials in the vault?" I paused as another crash echoed from below. The infected were beginning their mindless assault on the stairs, drawn by our voices and movement. If any of those break open, if that stuff gets into the air... A new sound cut through the chaos. Helicopter rotors. Through the second-floor windows, we could see military choppers approaching downtown, firing into the streets below. "They're not here to save us," Mike said grimly, recognizing the flight patterns. "That's an extermination run. They're going to sterilize the hot zone." The implications hit me hard. We had maybe an hour before the military decided to solve this problem with high explosives, and we were trapped in a building full of whatever had started this nightmare, surrounded by infected who would keep coming until they got us or we got them. I looked at our group, the hostages who were now counting on their captors for survival, my crew who'd followed me into what should have been a simple heist, and the CDC case containing what might be the source of it all. "New plan," I said, checking my ammunition one last time. "We're going to end this right here, right now." The infected had reached the second floor, their inhuman moans echoing through the stairwell. Like animals drawn to blood in the water, they would keep coming, driven by nothing more than primitive urges and killer instinct. We had to destroy the samples, had to burn every trace of Project Echo, and somehow we had to survive long enough to make sure the truth got out. The next few minutes would determine not just our fate, but possibly the fate of everyone in Sacramento, maybe even beyond. And based on the mindless howls coming up the stairwell, those minutes were going to be interesting indeed. The second floor of First National wasn't designed to be a last stand, but we were making it work. We'd overturned heavy wooden tables to create a barrier at the top of the stairs, where the infected were now piling up like mindless animals, drawn by our movements and sounds. The noise of helicopter rotors grew closer, punctuated by sporadic gunfire from the streets. Through the windows, we could see fires spreading through downtown Sacramento. The military's containment was already underway. "We need to get back to the vault," I said, reloading my weapon. "Whatever's down there, we need proof. Evidence of what happened here." "Evidence?" Cooper asked, firing another shot down the stairwell. "Ray, we need to focus on staying alive." I pulled out the CDC documents I'd grabbed earlier. They were above my pay grade, full of technical jargon and redacted sections. But I knew enough about covering tracks to recognize when something big was being hidden. "This isn't a coincidence," I said. "CDC materials in a bank vault? Right when all this starts, someone needs to know." A thunderous explosion from somewhere nearby cut me off, rattling the windows. The military was getting closer. "Ray." Mike's voice was steady as he pointed to the far wall. "There's another way down. Service elevator shaft, emergency access ladder inside." I remembered seeing it in the building plans we'd studied for the heist. A straight shot down to the basement, assuming we could reach it. "Maintenance doors on the other side of this floor," Mike continued. "Through the executive offices." I nodded, already calculating. "Cooper, Lisa, hold this position, buy us 10 minutes. Marcus, you're with me and Mike. We'll get back to the vault, grab what we can carry. The rest of you, stay here and be ready to move fast when we get back." Tom, the construction worker, stepped forward. "I'm coming too. Extra pair of hands might help." I started to argue, but another explosion in the distance made the decision for me. We were running out of time. We moved quickly through the executive offices, stepping over broken glass and fallen artwork. The infected's moans echoed behind us, but Cooper and Lisa's position was holding, for now. The maintenance door was locked, but that was hardly an issue for people who rob banks for a living. Marcus had it open in seconds, revealing the elevator shaft beyond. The emergency lights cast an eerie glow down the metal ladder that ran along one wall. Far below, the elevator car sat dark and silent in the basement. "I'll go first," I said, checking my weapon. "Mike, you're last. Watch our 6. The climb down was nerve-wracking. Every clang of boots on metal seemed amplified in the shaft, and I kept expecting infected to start pouring in after us. But we made it to the basement without incident. We moved through the dark corridors, guided by emergency lighting and memory from our earlier visit. The vault door still stood open, the CDC cases untouched. "Grab one," I ordered, selecting the case we'd opened earlier. "And any paperwork you can find. Quick and quiet." A crash from above cut through the silence. Through the open elevator shaft, we could hear new sounds of fighting. "Ray!" Cooper's voice echoed down. "They've broken through. Lisa's hit. We need—" His words dissolved into gunfire. I looked at the CDC case in my hands, then at the shaft above. The choice was impossible. Secure the evidence or save our people. "Split it up," Tom said, grabbing some vials and documents. "Each of us carries something. Better odds something makes it out." I nodded, quickly distributing materials among us. None of us understood exactly what we were carrying, but we all knew it had to survive. We were halfway up the ladder when the screaming started. The infected had breached our defenses upstairs. We could hear the chaos of close-quarter combat, the desperate shouts of survivors, the inhuman shrieks of the infected. Every instinct told me to climb faster, to get up there and help. Then another sound froze my blood. From below came a deep moan, echoing through the basement darkness. "They're in the basement," Marcus shouted. "The utility tunnel. They're coming through the utility tunnel." I looked down to see shapes moving in the darkness below. drawn by our earlier noise. Their hungry moans echoed up the shaft as they stumbled toward the ladder. Mike and I clung to the rungs, trapped between horror above and horror below. Whatever we'd collected was distributed between us now, fragments of evidence that might explain this nightmare, if we lived long enough to understand them. Another explosion rocked the building, closer this time. Through the shaft I could smell smoke. The fire was spreading. Within minutes the military would start their final bombing run. We were out of time, out of options, and very nearly out of hope. But I didn't survive 20 years of heists by giving up when things got impossible. I looked at Mike, saw the same determination in his eyes. "We go up," I said. "Get anyone still alive, find another way out. Have to survive to expose whatever this is." Mike nodded grimly. Together. We started climbing again, toward whatever awaited us in the chaos above. In my pocket, the vials clinked softly against each other. Little pieces of a puzzle we didn't understand, but knew we had to preserve. The next few minutes would determine if any of it mattered, and based on the sounds above and below us, those minutes were going to be pure hell. The second floor was a war zone when we reached it. Overturned furniture, broken glass, and worse things covered the floor. Cooper was down, clutching a bleeding leg while Lisa provided cover fire. The remaining hostages had retreated to the far corner, where the windows offered a view of the approaching military operation. The infected that had broken through were sprawled across the floor, finally still. But more were coming. Always more. Their endless moans echoed up the stairwell, driven by nothing but base instinct and hunger. "The roof," I shouted over the chaos. "It's our only shot." Marcus helped Cooper up while Mike and I cleared a path. We fought our way to the roof access, the sounds of the infected mixing with the growing thunder of helicopter rotors. The military was closing in, and the flames spreading through downtown cast an orange glow across the early morning sky. The roof door groaned as we forced it open. Fresh air hit us like a punch after the stale horror below, but we had no time to enjoy it. "There," Mike pointed to the adjacent building. "Maintenance bridge. It's our way out." A narrow metal walkway connected our roof to the neighboring structure, some kind of office building that looked largely untouched by the chaos. In normal times, I'd never consider crossing it. But these weren't normal times. Behind us, the roof door shuddered as infected began pounding against it. The barricade wouldn't hold long. "Move," I ordered, helping Cooper toward the bridge. "Quickly, but careful. One at a time." Lisa went first, testing the metal bridge's stability. It held but swayed sickeningly in the morning breeze. The remaining hostages followed while Mike and I kept watch on the door. An explosion rocked the building, closer than any before. Through gaps in the surrounding buildings, I could see military helicopters moving into position. Whatever they were planning, it was about to happen. The door behind us splintered. Infected began squeezing through the gap, their dead eyes fixed on us with predatory intensity. Mike opened fire, dropping the first wave, but more pushed through. "Ray!" Marcus called from the bridge. "We need to go, now!" I turned to see everyone except Mike had made it across. The bridge swayed under their weight but held. Behind us, the infected were pouring onto the roof, drawn by our movement and voices. "Mike," I started to say, but he cut me off. "Go," he said, still firing. "Get them out of here, make it count." Before I could argue, he shoved me toward the bridge. "Go!" I crossed the metal walkway at a run, trying not to look down at the alley far below. Behind me, Mike's gunfire continued, punctuated by the savage moans of the infected. Just as I reached the other side, a deafening roar filled the air. A military helicopter rose into view, its weapons trained on the bank building. "Get down!" I screamed, tackling the nearest person as the world exploded. The helicopter opened fire with some kind of incendiary weapon. The bank's roof erupted in flames. Through the inferno, I caught one last glimpse of Mike, still fighting as fire consumed everything. The bridge collapsed in the explosion, taking several infected with it. They fell silently, hitting the pavement below with sickening finality. We scrambled inside the office building as more helicopters appeared, unleashing hell on the infection zone. The bank, our prison and fortress for the last endless hours, began to collapse in on itself. In the relative safety of the office building's top floor, I finally had a moment to process. Cooper was badly hurt but alive. Lisa had made it, along with Marcus and most of the hostages. Out of 16 people who'd started this nightmare in the bank, only 9 remained. "We should move," Cooper said, grimacing as Lisa tightened a bandage on his leg. "They'll sweep these buildings next." I nodded, already planning our next move. The maintenance tunnels, they run under most of downtown, might be our way out. We found the access point and descended into darkness. The tunnels were cool and damp, our footsteps echoing off concrete walls. Every shadow might have hidden an infected, but we kept moving, following the emergency lights toward what we hoped was safety. After what felt like hours, we reached a service exit that would take us beyond the quarantine zone. But as we emerged into early morning light, we realized our nightmare was far from over. In the distance, we could see other military operations, not just in Sacramento, but flames and helicopter activity visible for miles in every direction. Emergency broadcasts echoed from abandoned cars, reporting similar outbreaks in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Portland. This wasn't a cover-up. This was desperation. A military convoy roared past our position, loaded with soldiers and equipment. They didn't even notice us, too focused on containing whatever this was before it spread further. "My God," Lisa whispered. "It's everywhere." I looked at our small group of survivors, thinking about Mike and the others we'd lost. We'd started the day as criminals planning a simple bank heist. Now we were just people, trying to survive in a world that had gone mad in the span of 12 hours. "What do we do now?" Marcus asked. I watched another convoy pass, heading toward more fires on the horizon. "We keep moving. Find somewhere safe, if there is anywhere safe left." The infected still roamed the streets, and the military fought their desperate battle for containment. The world as we knew it was ending, not with a bang but with a moan. We headed east, away from the fires and chaos. The future was uncertain, but we were alive. For now, that would have to be enough. The sun climbed higher, and somewhere in the distance, more sirens began to wail.